The moment the man suddenly looked around, his heart skipped a beat. Their boat wasn't floating on the ocean. It was drifting above a luxurious city that had completely sunk beneath the water. Right below them, the rooftop of a towering skyscraper was clearly visible underwater. Once a thriving modern city filled with millions of people, it had now turned into a giant graveyard. So, what kind of disaster wiped out everything? This is the story of the apocalyptic movie Greenland, Migration. The catastrophe began exactly 5 years ago, when two massive fragments of a giant comet called Clark crashed into Earth like the Grim Reaper's axe. The impact unleashed a global firestorm that destroyed more than half the planet. Within just a few hours, nearly 80% of the world's population was wiped out forever. 5 years have passed, but millions of pieces from the comet are still orbiting Earth, and they can fall back as deadly meteors at any moment. The remaining survivors now live inside underground bunkers, while deadly radiation covers the outside world. At the same time, a rumor has spread that somewhere on Earth, there's still a place free from radiation, a place that represents humanity's last hope. Our main character, John Garrity, lives in an underground bunker in Greenland with his wife, Allison, and their sixth son, Nathan. But constant earthquakes have started cracking the bunker walls, and the nearby volcano could erupt at any time. So one day, John puts on his heavy anti-radiation suit and steps onto the barren surface for the first time in 5 years. After crossing the endless sand, he reaches the shoreline. Seeing several lifeboats floating in the ocean fills him with hope, and he immediately reports it to his team over the walkie-talkie. He then swims toward a nearby military ship. As he gets closer, he notices a small hole in the lower part of the ship and carefully crawls inside, hoping to find something useful. Instead, he finds nothing but dead bodies. Disappointed, John is about to leave when he notices an old journal inside the captain's cabin. He picks it up and opens it, only to find a fresh purple flower pressed between its pages. After all these years, seeing a living flower brings a smile to John's face. He decides to take it home for Allison. Just then, a warning comes through his walkie-talkie. A radioactive storm is heading straight toward him. Without thinking twice, John runs back toward the bunker, risking his life. As he runs, he tells his team over the radio to keep the bunker door open until he gets back. Luckily, he reaches the bunker just before the storm arrives and makes it safely inside. After passing through the automatic decontamination chamber and taking off his suit, John is still shaken by everything he saw outside. He gives the flower to Allison, making her smile. Then he turns to Nathan and says firmly, "The outside world is dangerous. Never go out there." After that, Allison heads to a meeting where the bunker officials are discussing their next move. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake like a massive earthquake. Everything starts trembling. Computer screens flash with error messages, and panic spreads throughout the bunker. A powerful earthquake outside has ripped a massive crack through the Earth's surface. Red alert sirens echo across the entire bunker as everyone starts screaming in fear. Without wasting a second, John puts oxygen masks on his wife and son and rushes toward the exit. But the main entrance is completely blocked by falling debris and the panicked crowd. Fortunately, John knows every secret passage inside the bunker, so he leads his family through another exit. The moment they make it outside, the entire bunker collapses behind them. But the outside is even worse. People are running in every direction, desperately trying to save their lives. Since John had told everyone about the lifeboats near the shore, the crowd races straight toward them. Terrified survivors desperately try to climb aboard, but there are simply too many people. One of the lifeboats flips over, and some survivors even start fighting over oxygen masks. That's when John notices his friend being attacked by people trying to steal his mask. He rushes over to help, but during the struggle, someone snatches John's own mask and runs away. John doesn't have time to chase the thief. Instead, he helps his friend back up and, together with his family, climbs into the last remaining lifeboat. As soon as they're inside, everyone starts yelling, "Close the hatch, or we'll all sink!" With no other choice, the guard seals the door. Outside, hundreds of innocent people pound on the hatch, begging to be let in. Then Nathan tells John to look out the window. A gigantic tsunami is racing straight toward them. The people outside immediately turn and run for higher ground, but the massive wave swallows them all in a single instant. The lifeboats are thrown high into the air by the enormous waves, sending everyone inside crashing into the walls. After several violent impacts, the boat finally stabilizes. John immediately grabs the captain's compass and orders the crew to head southeast. If the map is correct, they should be able to reach the safe city of London by sea within a week. But surviving for an entire week in this toxic, deserted ocean is like living on death row. A short while later, the radiation meter shows that the sea air contains much lower radiation levels, giving everyone a small sense of relief. But nobody celebrates. A satellite report reveals that the entire country of Iceland has been wiped off the map by the tsunami, and the ocean currents have completely changed. No one knows whether they're sailing toward London or straight to the bottom of the ocean. That night, John couldn't fall asleep. He was afraid another disaster was just around the corner, and the very next morning, his fear came true. The lifeboat's engine suddenly broke down. If they couldn't fix it, they would all end up dying on that boat. John grabbed every tool he could find and started repairing the engine. After working on it for a while, he finally got it running again, and the lifeboat continued its journey. That night, John lay on the roof of the boat with his son, Nathan. The beautiful Milky Way that once filled the night sky was gone. In its place were millions of rocky fragments from the the shattered Comet drifting across the sky. A few more days passed. The boat had completely run out of food and fresh water. Weak from hunger, everyone lay motionless on the floor. Then, suddenly, the boat slammed into something massive and came to an abrupt stop. John opened the cabin door, and the sight in front of him left him speechless. The rooftops of an entire flooded city were sticking out above the water. Moments later, the lifeboat drifted onto dry land. Everyone climbed off the boat. That's when they noticed a warning sign. It read, "Liverpool has been declared abandoned. There is no safety here." Seeing this, John turned on his radiation meter. The air was still toxic, but it was survivable for a short time. Staying too long, however, meant cancer or death. They needed to reach London's main military bunker as quickly as possible. Just then, they spotted a few people walking along a deserted road. John led his family after them, but the scene ahead stunned them. Thousands of desperate refugees were standing in long lines. Years of radiation exposure had turned their skin dark and covered their bodies with painful blisters. On the other side of a large security fence, heavily armed soldiers stood guard. Suddenly, the military commander shouted through a loudspeaker, "Stay back! By government order, only VIP officials and scientists with a special green card are allowed beyond this wall." Hearing that, Allison quickly pulled out her old VIP government seal from her days on the bunker council and showed it to the soldiers. The commander looked at it and signaled for the gate to be opened. But just as the Garrity family stepped forward, John's friend froze in panic. During the fight over the oxygen masks, he had lost his precious clearance token. The soldiers refused to let him enter. Before the gate closed, they shot him dead. At that exact moment, another radioactive storm swept through the area. Everyone scattered in every direction. Trying to save his family, John begged the driver of a nearby SUV for help. The driver smirked and said, "Nothing's free anymore. If you want a ride, hand over that Rolex on your wrist." John didn't hesitate for even a second. He took off his expensive watch and handed it over. The driver immediately let the family inside and sped away from the storm. But John had no idea. The real danger was still waiting ahead. The SUV raced down the highway toward London. About halfway there, the driver suddenly pulled over on a deserted dirt road and said, "It's a long drive. Why don't you all get out and stretch your legs?" John stepped out with Allison and Nathan. But then, a deafening roar echoed across the sky. John instantly dropped to one knee and placed his hand on the ground. His years of experience as a construction engineer told him this wasn't another radiation storm. It was something far worse. He looked up, and his eyes widened in horror. Millions of blazing red meteorites were tearing through the sky and falling toward Earth. There was nowhere to run. John and his family hid behind a massive tree and held each other tightly. The air grew so hot that it felt like they were standing inside a furnace. Burning rocks rained down from space like a fiery storm. Just then, the SUV driver ran into the open. John shouted for him to take cover, but it was too late. A meteor slammed directly into the SUV, killing the driver instantly. Miraculously, the Garrity family survived without a single injury. Once the meteor storm finally ended, they searched through the wreckage, gathered whatever food and supplies they could find, and continued their journey toward London. After traveling for some time, they finally arrived at Allison's elderly mother's house. Seeing her daughter, son-in-law, and little Nathan alive after so many years brought tears to her eyes. The entire family embraced each other, overwhelmed with emotion. Allison's mother's old house turned out to be surprisingly secure. There was no electricity or running water anymore, but she and a few neighbors had managed to turn it into a safe place to survive. After 5 years of living through hell, John's family finally got a chance to breathe. But that peace didn't last long. While Allison was resting in her room, she suddenly heard someone coughing violently in the bathroom. Alarmed, she rushed over and found fresh blood splattered across the sink. John was standing there. The moment he saw Allison, he realized he couldn't hide the truth any longer. Years of radiation exposure had destroyed his lungs. The doctor had already warned him. Once he started coughing up blood, he would only have a few weeks left to live. It wasn't surprising. Over the past 5 years, John had spent more time outside the bunker than anyone else. Hearing the truth broke Allison's heart. She couldn't hold back her tears. John wrapped his arms around her and, after a long moment of silence, quietly said, "Allison, we don't have time to stay here. Before my last breath, I have to get you and Nathan to safe ground. I need to know you'll both be able to live in peace after I'm gone." The next morning, they said a heartbreaking goodbye to Allison's mother. Before they left, she secretly slipped a loaded pistol into John's hand and tearfully said, "Please, take care of my daughter and my grandson." With heavy hearts, they started the car and continued into the unknown. After crossing London's outer limits, they drove through narrow dirt roads deep inside the forest. Everything seemed unusually quiet, but once darkness fell, disaster struck. Several shadowy figures suddenly appeared in front of the vehicle. A gunshot echoed through the night. A young refugee girl riding with them was shot straight through the head and died instantly. John reacted without hesitation. He grabbed his pistol, jumped out of the vehicle, and took cover behind the car. The bandits shouted from the darkness, "If you want to live, leave the keys and walk away." Thankfully, John still had the pistol Allison's mother had given him. Otherwise, they wouldn't have stood a chance. The robbers had clearly underestimated him. John took careful aim and dropped the first bandit with a single shot. The second gunman immediately ducked behind a rock and opened fire. John pulled the trigger to return fire, only to realize he was completely out of bullets. Just when it looked like all hope was lost, the second bandit charged toward John. That's when Allison stepped up. She grabbed the automatic rifle from the dead bandit's body and fired one perfectly aimed shot. The bullet killed the second attacker instantly. The three of them had escaped by the narrowest margin. The following morning, they buried the young refugee girl beside the road with dignity before continuing their journey. Several hours later, while driving along a deserted mountain road, they suddenly came to a massive traffic jam. John stepped out of the car and froze. A gigantic crack, hundreds of feet deep, had split the earth in half, completely destroying the main road. The only way across was a fragile bridge made of ropes and bamboo stretched over the enormous chasm. Just then, freezing winds swept through the mountains. John didn't waste a second. He stepped onto the swaying bridge first and held Nathan's hand. Looking into his son's eyes, he said, "Just keep looking at me. Don't look down into the canyon, and you'll be fine." The moment John placed his foot on the narrow bridge, his heart started pounding. Right then, a powerful gust of wind blasted through the mountains. The bridge swung nearly 90 degrees in the air, making it feel as if they were about to be thrown into the abyss. As soon as the wind eased, they picked up speed and barely made it across to the other side. But the real test was only beginning. Ahead of them was an even more dangerous crossing. A narrow steel ladder stretched across piles of broken concrete. The only way across was to crawl on their stomachs. John sent Allison and Nathan first while he stayed behind to protect them. The three of them slowly crawled forward, but just as they reached the middle, another powerful earthquake shook the ground. The steel ladder beneath them started shaking violently. To make matters worse, another group of refugees was crawling across a parallel ladder beside them. Part of that ladder suddenly snapped. Terrified of dying, one selfish man shoved an innocent boy aside to save himself. But even that wasn't enough. When he realized his own ladder was about to collapse, he spotted John's ladder and tried to jump onto it. John's survival instincts kicked in instantly. John and Allison pulled Nathan tightly into their arms and crawled forward with every ounce of strength they had. With one final push, they jumped onto the safe side of the cliff. The moment their feet touched solid ground, the entire steel ladder collapsed into the deep canyon behind them. Their vehicle was gone now. The three of them continued on foot across the scorching wasteland for hours. Nathan was exhausted and could barely keep walking. Yet there wasn't a single sign of the lush paradise they had been searching for. All they could see was burned black earth stretching to the horizon. Then, out of nowhere, an armed man in a French military uniform stepped out from behind the bushes and aimed his rifle at them. John immediately raised his hands and calmly introduced himself, his wife, and his son, explaining everything they had been through. Hearing John's story, the soldier lowered his weapon. He led them to a secret underground bunker hidden beneath the hillside. This area was part of the devastated northern border of France. The soldier welcomed the starving family, gave them a hot meal, and treated them with kindness. When he learned they had traveled all this way, searching for the legendary safe haven known as the Crater, his expression turned serious. "It's not a myth," he said. "The crater is real, but reaching it is like walking straight into death. The entire valley is surrounded by rival militias still fighting with advanced weapons. Anyone using the main highway is as good as dead." After a brief pause, he continued, "But you've risked everything for your son, so I'll tell you about a secret route." The soldier pulled an old photograph of a senior military commander from his pocket and handed it to John. "Show this to the commander at the final checkpoint. He'll know exactly what it means and help you get through." Then the soldier made one final request. "My little daughter, Camille, she has no future in this nightmare. Please, take her with you to the crater and give her a chance to live." Without hesitation, Allison took the little girl's hand and agreed. Soon, the family set off again in a new vehicle, with Camille traveling alongside them. But John's condition was getting worse. The damage to his lungs had become unbearable, and he kept coughing up blood. They pulled the vehicle behind a large rock so John could rest for a moment. But the instant they stopped, a heavily armed military unit surrounded them from every direction. One of the sergeants shouted, "Are you people out of your minds? This entire field is packed with millions of landmines. The fact that you're still alive is nothing short of a miracle. Don't move!" Just then, little Camille tearfully explained everything in French and showed them the commander's photograph. The soldiers immediately lowered their weapons. Even the captain decided to personally escort the family across the deadly war zone under the cover of darkness. Pointing at a map, he explained that the valley ahead was the only route leading to the crater, but rival rebel forces fought there day and night with tanks, artillery, and missiles. Around midnight, under military protection, the five of them crossed rows of barbed wire and entered the battlefield. Machine guns echoed from every direction, while tank shells exploded across the valley. Keeping their heads down, they followed the soldiers' footsteps as bullets flew overhead. After passing countless bodies and bomb craters, they finally reached the military's main safe zone. Breathing heavily, the captain said, "From here, the road is clear. Cross that hill and you'll reach our main checkpoint. Show the commander that photograph." John thanked him, and they continued walking until sunrise. At last, they reached the military camp. But when John asked about the commander, the sergeant delivered heartbreaking news. The commander had been killed during the shelling the previous night. Seeing John's condition, the new colonel placed him on the last bus heading to the crater. As the bus drove through a narrow mountain pass, a group of armed raiders suddenly attacked. John and the other passengers fought back. During the gunfight, John was shot. Without wasting a second, Allison got everyone back onto the bus and drove it toward the crater. After After walking the final stretch on foot, they finally reached the paradise they had been searching for, the crater. For the first time in years, the family smiled with genuine hope once again.